Baseball is dead.
Rest in peace.
We are joined by the legendary Tim Kurkjian, who, by the way, I love the man. I'm jealous of all the memories that he has with Dallas and Shohei. We're going to get into some of those. Do you remember, Tim? You were a guest on Starting Nine, the first iteration of this podcast in 2017. You must have been like guest number 2 or 3 when we were going through the Rolodex and we were trying to get this podcast off the ground back in the day. And that feels like a lifetime ago. But you do podcasts all the time. You probably don't even remember coming on with us.
I do remember coming on. I have my own podcast now. My son Jeff and I have the Is This a Great Game or What podcast. And Jared, and Shohei and Dallas know all about this. I am so bad at technology, as I've already told you, that I drive 3 hours to my son's house in Philadelphia because he's got all the technology in his basement. And I'm scared to death to be alone in my own house with my own technology, just in case something goes wrong. So I drive there, sit next to him. It's a better show when you sit next to a person, but I'm only there because I'm afraid my microphone won't work and he can fix it and I can't.
How do you think technology has impacted your job over the years?
Well, it has really impacted me, and I'm so bad. I have like 700,000 followers on Twitter, and I don't even know how to use it. I'm scared to death of it because something bad is going to happen. I'm going to send out the wrong thing every time I have to send out a tweet. And I've sent out a lot of them over the years. I have to call someone and say, am I doing this properly? Otherwise, something bad might happen. So yes, the technology has completely changed my life, and sadly for the worse.
Have you ever had like a Twitter misfire? Like, have you ever because Gammons is known for it. Like Gammons will just fire off a bunch of letters and numbers. Like that's kind of like known as a Gammons tweet. Like, have you ever had something like that happen? Yeah.
About 4 years ago, I sent out a butt tweet, which I thought was impossible to do. We've all done butt calls and everything else. I sent out a butt tweet, which didn't make any, it was just gibberish. And some guy writes in, dude, you haven't tweeted for 2 years, and this is what we get. It made absolutely no sense. And then I wrote this incredible apology. Sorry, I stink at this. I should never use this again. And I got 10,000 likes on an apology. That's how bad I am at this.
That's incredible. I told you before, as I was warming you up for this conversation, I said it's less Q&A. It's more just casual conversation. It's kind of ask a question, see where the conversation goes. So with that in mind, Tim, not in a million years are you going to be able to guess what my first question is. My first question for you is, I saw a photo where you were playing basketball with Cal Ripken Jr. Like, was this a thing that you did on a regular basis? Like, do you have a Cal Ripken Jr. basketball story for us?
I have about 100 of them, unfortunately. It was a raging conflict of interest. I was invited to go play. He didn't even know I was going. I showed up, and I ended up playing with him 100 times. Here's how competitive he is, fellas. We're playing in the dinkiest, dingiest little gym. This is long before he gets a gym at his house, okay? Which I'll explain is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. But we're playing 5-on-5. There's nobody waiting. So if you lose the game, you get to play in the next game, all right? It's 14-14. He's on the other team. We're playing to 15 straight. He literally gives a timeout sign, brings his team over in the smallest pickup game ever to devise a play in which they could score the final bucket and win. Well, they missed. We get the rebound. We score. And he is furious that they lost the game. This is when I knew who Cal Ripken really was. If we're going to play, we're going to play correctly, and my team is going to win. That's how he looked at everything. And occasionally, when I was on the team opposite of him, and his man was a little late coming down on offense, he loved to harass me from end line to end line. He is a foot taller than me, weighs 100 pounds more than I do, and he loved to cover me from end line to end line. Finally, I just said, would you please stop harassing me. Would you please just stop trying for 1 second? And he said, no, that's how it worked. So I have a million other stories like that, but that's all you need to know about playing in a game with Cal Ripken Jr. His team won like all the time.
That's incredible.
Timmy,
he's my favorite player.
Who have you seen or who have you interacted with around the game today that gives you that same kind of feeling? You know, maybe you don't know that about them, but you've just in passing or being around them briefly, you're reminded, like, you know what? I've seen this before. I've felt this before.
Yeah, I don't have the same personal contact with Mike Trout, but he is the same guy. And I know he's hurt and we don't talk about him much anymore, but he's one of those wildly competitive people who everything he has to do, he has to win at. So Raul Ibanez, a former teammate of Mike Trout's, told me the story that Trout and BP several years ago is in Tempe, and he looks at the guys in his group and he goes, I'm going to hit a home run into that trash can beyond the left center field fence. All right. It was a trash can. It's not a dumpster. It's one of those green round trash cans. And like 11 pitches later, Mike Trout hit a home run into the trash can. And then he did it again that spring. I went to him finally. I said, Mike, tell me the truth. Have you done this before? And he wouldn't answer. And finally I yelled at him and I said, did you hit it in the trash can or not? And he goes, yes, I hit it into the trash can. Are you happy? So Raul also told me this game that he invented where you're in BP. And if you hit that screen over there, you get 2 points. If you hit that screen over there, you get 3 points. So before you get 3 outs. So in the first game they play, Ibanez beats Trout 6-3. And Trout is furious that he lost. So the next day he comes in and says, we're playing that game again today, and you're playing against me. And Ibanez says, no, I don't want to play. So they played anyway, and Trout beat him 40-4. Because he was so angry at losing this made-up game the day before that he went out and crushed Ibanez, and the world was good again because this dumb game he won. So Ripken, Mike Trout, there's a lot in common there.
That reminds me of, maybe you remember this, Tim. I believe it was 2016 when Barry Bonds was the hitting coach for the Miami Marlins. And in spring training, they had a home run derby. And Giancarlo Stanton was on the team, and Barry beat everyone, like on the Marlins. The active Major League roster, Barry Bonds won the home run derby. Do you remember that?
I do, and I'm not surprised whatsoever. Different level, but Matt Holliday had a home run hitting contest against his 2 sons last year. And Matt Holliday, the dad, beat his 2 sons, one who was the number 1 pick and the other one who's going to play pro ball very soon. Not surprised. Bigger, stronger guys never lose that swing. And I know we're not allowed to acknowledge this, fellas, but Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter I've ever seen.
We are a Barry-friendly podcast here, Tim. We love Barry Bonds here.
I got asked the other day, again, I don't want to start anything. I don't want people getting angry. It's just not my nature. But I got asked after Willie Mays died, who's the greatest living player? And I said, well, it has to be Barry Bonds. If you just go by the stats, who else could it be? That's how great Barry Bonds was.
It was Barry Bonds even when Willie was alive. All due respect to Willie Mays, but it was Barry. It's been Barry. It's always going to be Barry. Do you have any Barry Bonds stories? Because I know that he didn't exactly get along with the media, but I don't know how he could not get along with you. I feel like I don't know how there could be an experience where someone could not get along with you in an exchange.
Well, I never had a terse moment with Barry, but I picked my spots. I made sure I went in when it was my turn, and I made sure I was ready. Otherwise, it would get terse, believe me. But one day in St. Louis, I'll never forget this. He came up to me at the batting cage. He doesn't talk to anyone in the media. He comes up to me at the batting cage and just goes, how you doing, little man? Like that. And I went, oh my gosh, if my golden retriever had spoken to me, I would have been less surprised than Barry Bonds coming up to me and saying, how you doing, little man? I had recently written some ridiculous thing where I took all of the Barry Bonds home run victims, like in the history of the sport, hit home runs off, Fisher and Price, just stupid things like that. And I think he read it, and I think he appreciated it, and I think he looked at me and said, "You are a complete idiot for spending that much time to take a hard look at all of the home run, guys that I hit home runs off of." That I think he appreciated that. So he came up and spoke to me. That is that's something I won't forget. How you doing, little man?
Well, Timmy, you talk about the relationship that you had with Cal, and we were aware of just how tightly knit you were, tightly woven you were into the fabric of that club, that organization specifically. As you talked about technology and how you are deathly afraid of it, I am deathly afraid of another server. Tim, it's called Reddit. We can talk about that offline. So you and I are on the same page. But with the technology and the relationships that fans can have with players today through technology, through social media, have you seen, or how have you seen your experience start to change now? Because as players, we have to evolve with the times. We have to catch up with the velocity of the game, quite literally, the speed of it. Well, the speed of covering the game has changed as well. And you are someone who has continued to keep their fastball. So how has technology helped develop relationships, maintain relationships this day and age with players, as opposed to how it was probably more difficult initially for you?
Yeah, there used to be a day, say, when I worked for Sports Illustrated, when you got a cover story on Sports Illustrated, that was a huge deal for a major league player. I remember telling a few guys, the story I'm writing on you is going on the cover, and I'll never forget the look on their face. But this was 35 years ago that this was happening. It's just not the same anymore. So the players just don't need us like they used to. And that's okay, because social media has changed all of that. So social media has helped me, because being visible on TV, I don't have to have that awkward, "Hi, I'm Tim Kurkjian with the Baltimore Sun," and they look at me like I'm 3 feet tall. Like, why would I ever want to speak to you? Believe me, Reggie Jackson gave me that look once. Like, why would I want to take my time to speak to you? Well, TV has changed all of that. Social media has changed all that. People are visible now, and I guess that's a good thing. It's also a bad thing, but we're doing the best we can to deal with it.
In your years of covering baseball, obviously we've seen the transition from different eras. We know the steroid era. Take me back to 1998, because that was before the explosion in the awareness of steroids in baseball. When you're watching guys the size of Mark McGwire and the size of Sammy Sosa hitting all these home runs, did any part of you be like, that's a little weird? Or was it more just like, this is awesome, like, I love this, like, these guys look like superheroes and they're hitting all these home runs? Because I feel like I can't take myself back to 1998. Like, I was 9. I'd never heard the word steroids before. And now with baseball, like, the word is almost synonymous. Like, when people say steroids, you almost think baseball. It's crazy. But in 1998, while it was happening, before we knew really what was going on, did any part of you as an adult be like, this is a little strange, like, this is a little fishy to me?
Yeah, we all got that feeling at some point. Now, I was there for McGwire 60, 61, and 62. And I know people look at it now and said, those things didn't happen. They don't matter. I'm telling you, fellas, I was there. It happened. And at the time, at least, it mattered. You should have seen that crowd at Busch Stadium. People did not leave their seats while Mark McGwire's at the plate, of course. And then as soon as he made an out or hit a home run, they went and got something to eat. The whole game was revolved around Mark McGwire. But yes, we all saw guys show up the next spring, let's say, with a bigger body. And we missed the story. And I'm right at the top of the list of people who missed the story. So please, no excuses necessary here. But the people who broke the story on the whole steroid era, Mark Fainaru, Wada, and those guys, they didn't cover baseball every day. They went undercover to go get that story. It just, again, no excuses, but you just couldn't talk to somebody about the home run he hit. And then the next question is, oh, are you on steroids? I mean, those questions were not they were not feasible at the time for people who were covering the game every day. You needed to take a step back, get away from the daily coverage of the sport to truly understand it. Did we miss it? We all missed it. Are we ashamed of it? To some degree, yes. But I'm saying there is a mild excuse here that we weren't positive what was going on. And there was this tacit agreement going on in Major League Baseball. Everyone's doing this. No one's checking. No one's getting in trouble. And a lot of people look the other way. And that's exactly what happened.
Was it a thing yet in sports? Like at the time, like had it happened in the Olympics yet, or was that after?
I'm not sure what happened in the Olympics. I can't put things together here. I just know what happened in our sport. And when the numbers started exploding, 99, 2000, what a ridiculous couple of years. Not 2, but maybe 5 there. That's when we all started to wonder, like, how is this happening? How are we having this many 50 home run hitters when we hadn't had one since, we had Prince Cecil Fielder since George Foster, and then everyone was hitting 50 homers. It was just a crazy time.
Yeah.
Well, and just to, not to the defense of, but I think just to sort of add another layer to that from a player perspective, Tim's absolutely right. There was no way, especially in that day and age, that you were going to be able to come in and ask that sort of question and then follow up with, well, what was your approach late in the game when you got the hanging slider? Like you would look right through the individual who just asked you that question. They would never be allowed to ask another question again. You wouldn't even speak to them. So, that's just another layer of what Timmy had to deal with. Timmy, I want to shift gears a little bit just because of where our game is at right now and the amount of talent we have in our game. And I think specifically around a team that you are extremely familiar with, and the Baltimore Orioles. I think we've got great and interesting races in the National League as well. You've got really a list of 10 teams that are in a playoff picture there. Is this as exciting as baseball has been in terms of playoff pictures and potential for postseason berths as it's been in a while? And do you feel like the playoff picture has assisted in doing so for the game of baseball?
All right, look, I'm hopelessly biased on this stuff because I only really like and know one thing, baseball. I stink at everything else. I really like basketball, but that's about it of things that I like and that I know. So I think baseball is great today. And since Harper and Trout came into the league 12 years ago or so, I've never seen this kind of influx of young players, big, strong, fast, athletic players who just overpower the game with their physical gifts. And a bunch of those guys are on the Orioles, Dallas, and you know that. So Gunnar Henderson is 23 years old. Luis Gonzalez, who hit 57 homers in one major league season, was at Oriole Park the other day with the Diamondbacks as a broadcaster. And I'm sitting there talking to Jim Palmer, and he walks by, Luis Gonzalez walks by and says, "Hey, let me introduce you to Gunnar Henderson." So Luis Gonzalez meets Gunnar Henderson for the first time. 30 seconds later, Gunnar walks away. Louis looks at me and goes, "I can't believe how big he is. I can't believe that is a shortstop." And he said, he's got the biggest hands I've ever seen on a shortstop. That's what we're dealing with today, are players that look like Gunnar Henderson and Bobby Witt Jr. and Ellie De La Cruz and Paul Skenes and Mason Miller. Fellas, you know this. This is the next wave, and it is a breathtaking collection of players from a physical standpoint. And the next wave is going to come in 2 or 3 more years. There is no end to this, given how big, strong, fast, and ready these guys are, at least physically, when they get to the big leagues.
Well, and you talked about the holidays, and you've got Ronald Acuna Jr., his brother on his way as well. I mean, the talent is grotesque in terms of how much there is. What are your thoughts on the baseball IQ? Because in my opinion, as baseball players, we've never been more athletic, Timmy. But as baseball players, in my opinion, it feels like we've never been dumber either. Guys have never had less of a feel for the nuance.
Yeah, about 4 years ago, I wrote a 7,000-word story about base running in the major leagues, how it's the worst that I've ever seen. And I quoted a dozen people in uniform: Dusty Baker, on down who said the exact same thing. And it just doesn't follow. If the players are bigger, stronger, faster, and better than ever, they should run the bases better than ever. They should hit the cutoff man better than ever. And I think part of the problem is they are so unbelievably physically gifted. They just overpower the sport and therefore don't feel like they need to know all the subtle nuances of the game that I grew up watching in the 80s with Molitor, Yount, Brett, Trammell, Cal Ripken. Those are the guys that taught me how the game is supposed to be played. And even though they were talented, they didn't overpower the game with their physical gifts. That's what our guys do today. So I hear this wherever I go. I'm not happy to hear it. I don't bring it up, but most veteran players will tell you, former players will tell you, these guys are great today. They just don't know how to play the game. If they ever did really know how to play the game, there's no telling how great they could be.
Hey, Tim, Justin Havens, baseball is dead. Huge fan, really long time listener, follower. All right, so we very rarely, jokes aside, we very rarely get somebody with your grasp historically of the game on this. Well, we never do because nobody has it like you. So when it's all said and done, I'd love to know what your opinion on how history will view Shohei Ohtani, because the word greatest of all time has been tossed around to describe what he's doing or what he is capable of doing. He's not going to have the bulk contributions of the other people that have the GOAT claim. But do you think that's the sort of light he's going to be viewed in ultimately when we look back on his career 20 years from now?
Yes, I do. I think at the moment, though, it's still a little bit premature to call him the greatest of all time. I call him the most remarkable player I've ever seen. And maybe that's just semantics here, but I've never seen anybody that can throw at 100, hit a pitch thrown at 100, and then exit velocity of well over 100. I don't think there's ever been a player that could ever do that. But he hasn't done it long enough to be considered the greatest player of all time. I just spoke at the Babe Ruth Museum the other day, and there's no way around this. The guy was the best left-handed pitcher in the American League, and he decided, I don't want to pitch anymore, and he became, statistically at least, the greatest hitter of all time. Now, would that translate to today? That's a whole different story, but I really believe, and I'm in the vast minority on this, if there was a DH in 1920 in the American League, Babe Ruth would have hit 50 homers and won 20 games. I really believe that. He would have pitched every fourth day. He would have won a ton of games. He still has as many career shutouts as Pedro Martinez, and Pedro, for a short period at least, is the greatest pitcher I've ever seen. So as much as I admire what Shohei Ohtani's doing, and I just close my eyes, it's unbelievable. I just think we need a little bit more of it. But 20 years from now, yes, we might say he's the greatest player of all time. I just think it's a tiny bit early right now.
And along that same vein, do you think that we're going to start to see players or organizations entertain players performing at that level? Or is there going to be a baseline level of production that teams have to see before they seriously start to give a guy an opportunity like that to be a truly impactful two-way player?
Right. I just had to write a story for the Hall of Fame magazine on what baseball is going to look like in 2080. Okay. And I didn't even know what to do with it. But I wrote, among many other things, in 2080, we're still going to be looking for the next Shohei Ohtani, meaning I think he's a once in a lifetime kind of player. And I just don't think that there are people like this. The Dodger people have told me everything that guy does is surgical. That's the word that they use. Every single swing he takes, every step he takes when he runs, every time he picks up a baseball to throw it, there is a purpose behind it. I think he is unique in that way. I don't think we're going to see, Shohei's a two-way player. Let's get this guy and make him a two-way player. I think he's a once-in-a-lifetime player.
I don't disagree. I feel like, because some of these guys, I was down at the draft combine in Arizona, and I was there last year as well. And from the first year that I did it compared to just the very next year, the influx of players who identify as a two-way player was like 10x 1 year over the other. And of course, a lot of these players are not going to remain two-way players. I think it's just a matter of instead of, I don't know how to say this, instead of producing baseball players, the game is producing more athletes. Mm-hmm. So because they're producing more athletes, we're getting the players who have, like you said, the ability to hit balls at 100 plus exit velocity and able to throw 97 off the mound. They're just better athletes. But whether or not they stay two-way players or are able to make it to the big leagues as two-way players, I just don't think we're going to see somebody comparable. Even if we see like the next two-way player to make it to the big leagues in the next, call it 5 to 10 years, are they going to be as good as Shohei Ohtani just because they can do both? No. Like, it's just, he's a freak. The fact that he was the first, and not only is he the first, but he's the best. And you mentioned Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth didn't pitch and hit at the same time. Like, Shohei is doing it not only at the same time, but he's doing it on the days that he pitches, he hits. He's doing it on the same day. So I just, as a baseball fan, I have a great appreciation for what I'm able to see in real time. I'm not going to need hindsight 10 years from now, 15 years from now to look back and be like, man, I really wish I appreciated the peak years of Shohei Ohtani while I got them, because we're not going to see this again for a long time, maybe ever. Like, I'm appreciating every bit of it as it's happening in real time, as I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah, and I warn people all the time, please cherish what you're watching here, because we have never seen this before, and I don't think we'll ever see this again. And too many times people pass right in front of our eyes, and we don't even recognize what we're watching. Well, we need to with this guy, because this is breathtaking, every move that he makes.
Tim, I'm going to keep switching it up. I'm just going to keep throwing random questions at you throughout and see where the conversation goes. Who do you think does the best Tim Kurkjian impression? Who do you think does the best one?
Well, they're all terrible, because if that's what my voice really sounds like, I either have to get a new voice or a new job, because that is ridiculous. So to answer your stupid question, Jared, the best one has to be the first one. It's JP Arancibia. And the long story there is I went to Blue Jays camp one day with Tito Francona in spring training of 2012. Tito, of course, being the funniest man who has ever lived and the most mischievous man ever. So I walk in, and one of their pitchers said, you got to go over and see JP Arancibia. He does an impersonation of you. So I walk into the middle of the Toronto clubhouse in spring training, which is tiny. And there are 60 people there surrounding me. And Arancibia does this preposterous impersonation. And the whole place laughs their ass off. It was so funny. Well, Tito, being the mischievous man, he ambushes me on the air with this later that day on Baseball Tonight. I don't even know what's coming, but we've got JP Arancibia, unbeknownst to me, doing the impersonation now on national TV. And I just couldn't believe how stupid it sounded, but it was so freaking funny. So finally, I went to JP Arancibia and said, please, tell me that you do other impersonations. Tell me you can do Jack Nicholson. He goes, no, I can only do you. So I'm not sure if that made me feel better or worse, but it was worse, because after he did that, the next place I went to was the next day was the Rays camp, and Elliot Johnson, hilarious Elliot Johnson, did one. And then I went to Brewers camp once I got to Arizona, and Tim Dillard did me, and he crouched down when he did it. So
that's just
he
mean.
would be the same height. And the worst one / best one was when Ryan Dempster at Cubs camp, he sees that I'm coming, and he's like a real comedian. Like, he's done stand-up before. He does Harry Carey interviewing Tim Kurkjian using both of our voices. So he would say something stupid like, Tim, where do you get all those stats from? And then he used my terrible voice. So he interviewed me in Harry Carey's voice and in my voice. That was the spring of 2012. My life hasn't been the same ever since.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah, he does a phenomenal Harry Carey, by the way. That's unmatched. Your favorite baseball season ever, not just to cover, just to as an observer, which season for you had the best storylines, the best theatrics, the best finish, I guess, following it all the way to the end to the World Series. Like, what year can you take us back to where like that was the one?
All right, well, I really have to be myopic on this because this is important. I covered the 88 Orioles who lost their first 21 games. 0-21. No team had ever done worse than 0-14. They went to 0-21. And this is the point. The next year, we were certain that the Orioles were going to be terrible again. And Dan Shaughnessy, my dear friend, even predicted that Roger Clemens was going to pitch a no-hitter against the Orioles on opening day 1989. That's how bad they were.
Tim, that's the day I was born. Opening day 1989. And Cal Ripken Jr. hit a home run to beat the Red Sox in extras that day.
Right. He had a 3-run homer in the 7th inning off Clemens to tie the score. And the Orioles won 5-4 in the 10th inning on a sacrifice fly by Craig Worthington to beat to beat the Red Sox. And I'm telling you, fellas, this is why I'm answering it that way. I swear, 2.5 years of horrendous losing by the Orioles ended on that day. It's like they all looked at each other and said, we don't stink anymore. We just came back and beat the Red Sox. We knocked Roger Clemens out of the game. And the Orioles went to the final weekend of the season in Toronto, and they nearly won the division. So when you ask for my most memorable, that was the year we kept slapping our forehead going, they can't be any good. They can't be this good. And they almost won the division. That's when I learned the beauty of baseball, how you can go from so terrible to so good. And all the biggest change they made, and this is so important, they took the worst defensive outfield I've ever seen in 1988, and they added Brady Anderson, Steve Finley, Joe Orsulak, Phil Bradley, and Mike Devereaux, and they caught, and Dallas, you can appreciate this more than anyone. You put the ball in the air, that ball was caught in the outfield. Jeff Ballard, Bob Malicki, they all pitched differently because they knew, put it in the air, they're going to catch it. It changed the entire outlook of the team, and they went from one of the worst teams of all time to a team that nearly made the playoffs. That was 1989 for me, and I covered every one of those games. And that's the only way to really, truly appreciate a season is when every game is a special chapter in the book.
I love that.
What has been the biggest surprise for you in terms of how you have watched a season unfold outside of a rebound season from the 89 Birds? I'm talking, we didn't see this coming. It had started, it didn't stop from pole to pole. And I think we've had a couple different examples, but I want to hear from the time machine himself.
All right, so 1991, I was at Sports Illustrated, and we had to do our picks before the season. Always the worst idea ever. Like, we're actually going to get this right. So in 91, I picked the Angels to finish first in the AL West and the Twins to finish last in the AL West. And of course, the Twins won the AL West and the Angels finished last. So I had 1-7 and 7-1 all mixed up. That year, the Braves, who had finished in last place in 90, played the Twins, who had finished in last place in 1990. So 2 last to first teams played in the World Series in 1991. And the Jack Morris 10-inning, 1-0 shutout in Game 7 of the World Series. Seriously, imagine that happening today. There'll never be another 10-inning shutout ever, let alone in Game 7 of the World Series. That was the most surprising season because you looked at these teams and said, well, they're not going to be any good, and they ended up going to the World Series. Another reminder of the beauty of baseball is how quickly you can go from terrible to good or good to terrible. That speaks directly to the degree of difficulty of the game.
Jay?
Oh, I just had a couple of rapid fire for Tim, kind of some either or. Are you ready, Tim?
Of course.
Pedro, Maddox, Clemens, or Unit?
Well, I need career or peak value.
Career, whole thing.
All right. All right. Again, Clemens' numbers are unprecedented. He won 7 Cy Youngs. And you just look at the strikeouts, number of wins, shutouts, triple crowns. All 4 of those are in the same bag. If you take any of the 4, you will get no argument from me. But for career value, I take Clemens. For peak value, I take Pedro based on 99, 2000, which, as we know, he had a 1.90 ERA. Those 2 years combined, the league ERA those 2 years was 4.90. He was 3 runs below the league average for a 2-year period.
Building your team right now, Bobby Witt or Gunnar Henderson?
Oh, God. As always, Jay Hay asks the most impossible questions. All right, I'm going to take Bobby Witt Jr. He just got 4 straight 3-hit games. George Brett, of course, is the record holder with 6 straight 3-hit games. There is nothing not to love about Gunnar Henderson. In fact, Brandon Hyde, their manager, told me every time he steps on the field, he is certain that he is the best player on the field. He might not always be it, but he thinks it, which is half the battle given the degree of difficulty of this game. But the more I watch Bobby Witt run, my God, he's as fast as almost anyone in the league. And then he put on a show in the home run derby. He's got amazing gene pool with his dad. So I'll take Bobby Witt Jr., but anyone who takes Gunnar Henderson, no argument here.
You thought that one was hard. Buster Olney or Jason Stark? No,
Well, I'm going to take Jason Stark because I do the Buster Olney podcast once a week, and he routinely ambushes me on the air. He routinely criticizes me. Here's what he did the other day, and I love Buster. You know that. He says to me, give me your all-time home run derby team, okay? And I include Frank Howard and Bo Jackson and Babe Ruth, and each one he's saying, no, you're wrong. How could you be wrong? It's an opinion. It's not subjective. It's not objective. I'm just giving you my opinion on who I would like to see. And he argued with me on every single one of them. So I'm going with Jason Stark. He taught me more than anyone where to look for quirky things, even though I was looking for that stuff when I was in the 5th grade. Believe me, I was an idiot then. I'm an idiot now. But Jason has ambushed me far less than Buster has, who does it once a week on the podcast.
AL East this season, Orioles or Yankees?
I'm going to go with the Orioles, but they better go get a pitcher. And I just think the Yankees need to go get more right now than the Orioles need to go get. So I'll say the Orioles because I think, given they went and got Corbin Burns, that was a sign they're all in. I think they're going to be all in, and I think they're going to win the division. But both teams are going to make playoffs, obviously, and both will be really good when they get to October.
AL West this season, Mariners or Astros?
I'm going to go with the Astros. You guys see how poorly the Mariners are playing. And again, Jared, just Dallas, just to show you the game we played today, the Mariners this year have been so bad offensively. They struck out 10 or more times in 14 consecutive games. That is a major league record. The record was 13 consecutive games striking out 10 or more. This is their hitters doing that. And it was the Mariners who set that last year. And they broke their own record this year. And now with Crawford and Julio Rodriguez on the injured list, I think the Astros are going to win that division. And I still haven't counted the Rangers out from making another comeback here.
3 games out, 3 games under.
Last one, then I'll turn the mic back over. And this is the most important. If you had to choose less of you or more of me.
Jared, there are so many stupid inside jokes at baseball tonight. Every single night we went on the air with Rick Sutcliffe, whether it was a game, and I did a ton of games in the booth with him, or the show, he would always look at me and go, Jimmy boy, remember, less you means more of me. And I had to say, son, that's the 500th time that you've said that to me. I get it. You don't have to. He also, because he's a foot and a half taller than me, he always says, Timmy's the first one that knows that Timmy knows I farted before I did because I'm so, that's who Rick Sutcliffe is. So bad. He's made me laugh a few times, but I will tell you, I laughed with Jay Hay at Williamsport once. Carl Ravitch, Jay Hay, and I at Franco's in Williamsport. I've never in my life laughed that loud.
Man.
I'm not even sure what it was about, but I've also never seen anyone laugh louder in a booth than Dallas did when we did a game at Wrigley Field. The game was out of control. The booth is so tiny. I'm the only one that can make a threesome in there because I'm so small. But I brought up Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. And I said on the air, hey, I bet I could throw it over that mountain. And Dallas had to get out of his chair and leave the booth. He was laughing so loud. It was like 5th grade in math class. You can't stop. So I think the lesson is we're allowed to have a good chuckle in baseball. It's a game, and we cover it because we love it.
100%. That's incredible. Tim, for you, the Hall of Fame. We just had the induction ceremony this past weekend. There are several individuals who are not in the Hall of Fame, and I don't want someone that is on the ballot or going to be on the ballot. Give me someone that has had their time on the ballot that is not in the Hall of Fame right now that should be. Who's the one person that's the greatest injustice for you?
Well, again, Jared, this opens up an enormous argument here on what are we going to do with Bonds and Clemens. I mean, one is the greatest hitter we've ever seen. I just acknowledged the other is the greatest pitcher, long-term value I've ever seen. So I think almost by definition, they have to be the answer, one or both of those guys. And yet I totally understand the other side of the argument. But most of the guys that I looked at and said, how come this guy is not in? How can he not be in? All those guys have gotten in except for Bonds and Clemens.
Mm-hmm. Where are you at on A-Rod?
Well, I'm not real good at this either. This is the hardest thing I have to do is vote now. It's the greatest privilege I have. It's an honor, and I'm not giving it up. But it's impossible now. There are no more right answers. I have not voted for Alex Rodriguez. For this reason, when Bonds and Clemens played, as I said, there was this tacit agreement that no one's checking, no one's testing, no one's getting penalized for this. And it seemed like a lot of people were doing it and they just followed along. But when Manny and Alex Rodriguez got caught not once, but twice, there was testing, there was punishment. You were hurting your team. All sorts of things were going on. So am I happy with that decision not to vote for him? No. Am I comfortable? No, but I don't know what else to do. There are no more right answers when you're voting for the Hall of Fame. Every time I turn in my ballot, I say, I don't even like what I did, but I did the best I could. And that's all we can do right now.
You know what? I truly appreciate hearing that, Timmy. And it's not because it's coming from you specifically. I don't think I'm shocked at all that it's coming from you. But I think the honesty and the candor behind how difficult the decisions are, I think that's not something that we get a ton of from your counterparts, from some of your colleagues. I think a lot of people choose to, stand on their opinions and almost project those as they are correct. And this is a difficult decision to make, but here's why my stance is the one that you should side with. And I think you have just done a really great job of laying out, one, how hard it is, why it's as difficult as it is, and the fact that you're honest about whether or not you're comfortable with the decision. That's not candor that I think you get from people who do what you do in the interest of trying to be right and be popular all the time. So I truly, truly appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Dallas. There is no right. There is no popular anymore.
It's kind of like it's almost like when I first got access to the internet as a kid and you're just like, I can Google anything. I can learn about anything that I want. Like having Tim sit here being like, what year do I want to ask about? Like I can, you can literally just, and it's almost like it's so overwhelming. We're like, I'm frozen. I could ask about anything and learn about anything that I want. It's almost too much information for me. So let me ask you about Ken Griffey Jr., Tim. Do you have a favorite interaction with Ken Griffey Jr.?
Yeah, I I wrote Willie Mays' 90th birthday story for ESPN.com. It might be my favorite story I've ever done because I called about 30 people who played with, against Willie Mays, or just idolized him growing up. I tried for 10 days to get Ken Griffey Jr. And he said he called me back during that time. I promise you he didn't. Not the point. He finally calls me back. And I am with my daughter, Kelly, and we are at a shopping mall with her infant son, Carson. And we have just gotten to the car to drive back, and she has to breastfeed her son in the back seat of the car. And that's when Ken Griffey Jr. called me on the phone. So when Junior calls and you've been waiting 10 days because you can't write about Willie Mays without interviewing Ken Griffey Jr., you take the call. So I sat in the front seat of my Honda Accord while my beautiful daughter is in the back seat breastfeeding her infant son. And the best part was I told Junior, I said, listen, I just want you to know what's going on here. My daughter is in the backseat breastfeeding while I talk to you about Willie Mays. Well, he thought that was the funniest thing he's ever heard. And he gave me by far the best interview that he has ever given me on any subject. Maybe it was because Willie Mays is his hero like so many others and other center fielders, but that's my favorite Ken Griffey Jr. story. I interviewed him in the front seat. My daughter was in the back breastfeeding.
That's incredible. I mean, you'll never forget it.
Of course, you'll never forget it. There are a lot of unforgettable Ken Griffey Jr. stories. I can't top the one I just gave you because it was personal, but Scott Bradley told me when Junior was a rookie, he wasn't even a rookie. He had just gotten drafted by the Mariners, and they brought all of their draft choices to the Kingdom to show them this is your ultimate destination. So Junior is 18 years old. He just finished his senior year in high school. He goes to the Kingdom, and he is carrying on a conversation while taking batting practice with the writers. And they're all joking and he's laughing and he's hitting line drives all over the field at age 18. And Scott Bradley is in the outfield going, I can't believe he's this good to be this calm and this poised that he is having a conversation with the writers while he's hitting line drives all over the field. That's how precocious and advanced Ken Griffey Jr. was at 18.
Incredible.
All right, Timmy, I want to zoom out a little and go from player specific to game centric and organizations. What we are watching transpire between Major League Baseball and the Oakland Athletics is something that a lot of fans have never seen, never thought they would experience in their time as a baseball fan. However you want to phrase it, relocation, expansion, that could very well be along the same vein. Do you have any memories of, can you go back and think about a similar occurrence or something that is happening along the same vein that we're seeing right now with the Athletics and the potential to move and Major League Baseball?
I don't think so, Dallas. I think this is unprecedented how this has been handled by all sides. And it is really sad to watch this. Again, Jared, I'm an old man. I was there at the Oakland Coliseum when that place was open and you could see those hills in the background. That was a breathtaking place to watch a major league game. And then the thought that it's no longer going to exist potentially soon is really, really sad to me. But to answer your question, Dallas, all I can tell you is When I was 14 years old, the Washington Senators, my team, moved to Texas. They just got up and went. Bob Short, the owner of the team, was not pleased with the location of the ballpark, attendance, so he took them away. And I was 14 and I literally cried because my team, no matter how bad they were leaving town. And it hurt and it hurts to this day. So I can appreciate all those Oakland fans. Maybe they're not a million of them every day, but those who show up at the ballpark are diehard fans. I love those people, and I feel really, really sad that this is where we're probably going to end up with the A's leaving Oakland.
Timmy, what can you say to those fans? To the fans that experienced, and this is no longer Oakland specific. If fans experience this from other places, they can heed this advice as well. But for the fans that will be experiencing this, how did 14-year-old Timmy get over this? How did you make peace with it? How did you process it?
Well, I didn't. It took me a really long time. I became not even an Orioles fan because the Orioles in Maryland just used to clobber the Senators growing up. And as a little kid, I hated the Orioles, except for Brooks Robinson, of course. So you just deal with it. By the way, 10 years after that day where the Senators moved, I was covering the Texas Rangers for the Dallas Morning News. So I recovered in 10 years. And now here I am covering the team that used to play in Washington 10 years earlier. That's how I recovered. I started covering Major League Baseball every day as a beat guy.
You care to do some trivia, Tim Kurkjian?
All right, I have to do something else at noon, but yes, I will attempt this, but you're putting me under too much pressure because you guys got to remember, I'm only good at one thing in the whole world. I can't fix anything. I can't cook. We pray after we eat at my house when I cook. I mean, it's terrible. So if I miss a trivia question, the only thing I'm good at, I will fail at potentially, and then I might just... it will crush the rest of my day, but go ahead.
I feel like you're going to get this. I'm going to ask you the player who led a decade in home runs, each decade. Do you know who led the 1920s in home runs?
Well, that was Babe Ruth.
Correct. The 1930s.
God, this is impossible. Jimmy Fox.
Correct. The 1940s.
Just said shit on the air because
you can say sure. That here.
The 40s. God, I should know this. God, I'm so embarrassed.
Consider who's asking you the
Ted
question.
Williams. Ted
Correct.
Williams.
Right. The 1950s.
Ralph Kiner.
No.
Right. Who is it?
Duke Snider.
Oh, sorry.
The 1960s.
Hank Aaron?
He was second.
Willie Mays?
He was third.
Wow. The 1960s was not Mays or Aaron. Who was it?
Harmon Killebrew.
Oh, God.
The 1970s is tough. I will say that. 1970s is tough. Would not be my guess.
I used to know this stuff off the top of my head, but...
The guy I would have guessed is second.
I get to be 67 and I lose track. The 1970s was, I would say, George Foster?
No.
Bad guess. Who is it?
Willie Stargell.
Pops.
I would have guessed Reggie Jackson.
That would have been a good guess.
Yes. It looks like it starts at the 7th. I think Bonds never led a decade in home runs.
That's amazing to me. And not to interrupt here, but Gaylord Perry won the most games in the 60s and 70s combined. How many people do you think would get that? The most wins for the 60s through the 70s was Gaylord Perry. Amazing.
Crazy. I think the 1990s was Mark McGwire.
Right.
The 1980s would have been...
And that wasn't Barry Bonds.
No. The 2000s was A-Rod.
Right.
I don't know who the 1980s would have been. Who would your guess be?
What about Jim Rice? Was enough of his career in the 80s to... The 80s was kind of a lost decade for home runs, I feel like.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up live.
I think the 2010s is Nelson Cruz.
That sounds about right.
But I don't know who the 80s.
Right. And we'll let you guys stew on this one. Nelson Cruz, one of 15 guys, did 40 home runs in a season with 4 letters or fewer in his last name.
Oh.
This is how my life works, fellas. I went to a party once. A guy came up to me years ago. He doesn't even say hello. He just says, Tim, 15 guys have hit 40 home runs in a season with 4 or fewer letters in their last name. So the gauntlet had been thrown down. Now I have to guess them all. I went into a corner by myself until I got them all. It took 3 hours. I got a bunch of wrong answers, but when I got Wally Post at 1:00 in the morning, it was the greatest moment of my whole life, even more important than the birth of my children. I got Wally Post out of nowhere at 1:00 in the morning. That's how pathetic I am. And I still can't even get the home run leader for each decade. That's embarrassing.
I mean, I don't know the 80s. What did you find it, Jay?
Yeah, it's Mike Schmidt.
Oh,
Michael Jack.
Yeah. There you go.
I mean, middle name was Jack. Come on.
Yeah, you got to do that.
And I'll leave you with a Rick Sutcliffe joke since he killed me all those years. So I did a Phillies game with him. I was the dugout reporter. Aaron Boone and Sean McDonough are in the booth. And they come down to me and because we're doing a game in Philly. And they said, Tim, tell us about Mike Schmidt. So I said, well, he won 10 Gold Gloves and he won 8 home run titles. He could play the piano and move it too. It's just a line to show how powerful and how graceful he was. And Rick Sutcliffe, my dear friend, best teammate ever, said, I had no idea that Schmitty could play the piano. And he said it on the air. I had to say, son, he can't play the piano. It was a stupid line by a stupid sports writer. Sorry. I had no idea.
Tim Kurkjian, as always, a great pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. Red Sox, Yankees, ESPN, Sunday Night Baseball this Sunday at Fenway Park. Are you going to be in the house for that, Tim?
No, I'll be at baseball tonight doing the pregame show, and then I'm going to stick around in Bristol because that's the trade deadline week. So I've got a really busy Sunday through Tuesday.
Cool. Well, best of luck to you. We appreciate the time and your work as always, and we hope to see you again around these parts very soon. The MLB season is in full swing, and Underdog Fantasy wants to make it a lot more interesting. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em game is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats, strikeouts, total bases, home runs, and so much more. Make entries of all baseball, or you can mix and match across your other favorite sports. You can win up to 100 times your money, and it's a lot of fun. We had Sarah Perlman Mancini on the Red Sox Altcast last night, and she went higher on 0.5 home runs for Tyler O'Neill against the Rockies last night. Had a lefty on the bump, came off a hot series against the Dodgers. You're in Coors Field, and he hit not 1 but 2 home runs last night. She was great, by the way. I don't know, Jake, did you get to see the Altcast last night?
Yeah, I watched it. She was awesome.
She was great. Yeah, I mean, she knows her shit. Very cool to have Trey Mancini sitting off to the side and then coming on as a guest in the second inning. He's doing great. He was a fun interview for that broadcast. But yeah, no, she absolutely drilled that. Make sure that you sign up with the promo code Jared. That's Jared to get up to $250 in bonus cash and a special pick on Underdog. That's Underdog Fantasy promo code Jared. Hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Tim Kurkjian as much as we enjoyed being able to conduct it. He's awesome, this is a human baseball encyclopedia. Just always a fun conversation with Tim.
This interview is just this conversation with Timmy is exactly what I mean when I say he's incapable of having normal human being conversations.
Yeah.
You say a word to him and it triggers a thought. It triggers a memory with a Hall of Famer. It's unbelievable. The conversations that we've been able to have with him, the things you get to learn, the insight, it really is. He is a national treasure and absolutely needs to be protected.
Yeah. You have a hard out in a few minutes, Dallas?
Yeah, got to roll. We got an early ball game today.
Okay. Thoughts on Paul Skenes' outing last night?
Incredible. Just the strike. I've talked about the efficiency so many times with Paul Skenes and the fact that it's what your eyes go to when you start to look at the horsepower. And that's always going to be the conversation for me is you just heard Tim Kurkjian laud the efforts of the 7-time Cy Young Award winning Roger Clemens. What made Pedro so good in his time of dominance? We're talking about horsepower and we're talking about command and precision. And that's what Paul Skenes is featuring right now through the first part of his early career is power and precision. It is absolutely incredible. 24 for 29 first pitch strikes for this kid, entering the 9th inning for the first time in his career. The command with everything, 54 fastballs, 43 strikes, 18 two-seamers, 11 strikes, 10 curveballs, 9 of them strikes, 20 sliders, 15 of them strikes. Everything's a fucking strike until it's not, and when it's not, you're punched out. It just is utterly dominant right now. And there's no other way to describe it. This is why I get excited about it every 5 days, because you get to say the same shit in a different way every 5 days. How do we dress up dominance differently today? I went on the Fan yesterday and was talking about why he is so dominant, how he is so dominant, and the fact that you have a couple other arms. I mean, it's almost like Paul Skenes and Mitch Keller are vying to see who can cast a bigger shadow for the other one to dominate in during the week. Like it's incredible what's going on right now. But Paul Skenes he's a supreme talent, man.
Yeah, best statistically, his third best start of the year is first L. 8 1/3, 4 hits, 2 earned. Did not walk a batter. Punched out 8. Gave up the 1 home run to Nolan. 104 pitches, 78 strikes. Took the L there. Came up for the 9th inning. People were going nuts. We can talk a little bit more in depth. I know, Dallas, you have to get going. Where are the A's off to?
The A's are off to Oakland here again, ready to take the third and final game from the Houston Astros. That's right. Wow. Looking to sweep the Houston Astros, who
the fraudsters, people are saying.
Jay, you'll like this little nugget. The last time the Houston Astros were shut out by the Oakland Athletics, it was Mason Miller who started the ball game for the A's. And the most recent time that the A's shut out the Astros, it was Mason Miller who closed that ball game for the Oakland Athletics. So been a while since the shutouts, but I want to take my final thoughts here are to shine some light on Lawrence Butler of the Oakland Athletics.
Did he get the cycle last night? I know he was what was he 1 hit away?
Yeah, he was 1 hit away. He did not get the cycle, and it was, man, it was so good. And this is what I loved about him. You go back and watch it. Ball hit down the line, and he was looking to go to third base. He was not interested whatsoever in holding up should the double have been something he could pass. He was going to third. People would have lost their shit, but he wanted, it didn't matter. I want to go to third. He said, I didn't care. I wanted the cycle for sure, but I don't like that. You know me, DB. That's just how I want to roll. And I was like, I do. And I love you even more for just saying it right now, because if anybody had a question or a thought about what you were thinking about, well, you put that to rest. But he's a guy who had struggled early when he showed up, went back to AAA, and like many players do, they come up with a newfound vote of confidence and they're ready to hit the ground running. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Well, for Lawrence Butler, since his return on June 18th, he's just slashing a cool 341, 379 OBP, slugging 727. That's good for an 1106 OPS. He's got 8 homers, 25 RBI, and 6 doubles since then. So everything you want to see from a guy, go down, adjust, come back up, and apply. Lawrence Butler is doing that. Max Schumann has a lot to do with his comfort at the plate and the performance he's getting in the 9-hole from him. But this is about Lawrence Butler, who also made a unfucking believable play last night defensively, capping off a double play, fly out, throw out at home, got Bregman by fucking 10 feet. It was absolutely sexual.
All right, Dallas. Off you go. Go A's. Go green and gold.
Dog. That's
Beat the
right.
Stros.
Green and gold. Ready to sweep the Stros.
Swinging A's. Later. Thank God. Whew, he's finally gone. Now we can talk ball.
All right, let's pod.
Yeah, now let's have an educated baseball conversation for once. Holy shit.
God damn it.
It's about damn time. But Paul Skenes last night, coming out for the ninth inning, it was very cool. Very cool moment to see the crowd, that roar of the crowd, that oh shit, he's coming out for the ninth moment. Obviously, it's anticlimactic when the Cards end up, there's a play at second base, ruled out, overturned, he's safe, run scores, and it's like, but still, that's more of a Pirates offensive fail than a Paul Skenes fail. I mean, it's still, like I said, game score, third best outing of the season in which he was the starter for the National League in the All-Star game. That was his third best outing of the season. Pitched into the ninth, was very economic outing as well, having 104 pitches by the end of it when you've recorded an out in the ninth inning. Didn't walk anybody, which I think we need to have more appreciation for pitchers that throw 100 plus and don't walk guys. Like, you look at a guy's line, you see he doesn't walk anyone, like, that's cool. You see someone like Paul Skenes who can throw 101 miles an hour and it's moving a lot, and he doesn't walk anybody and punches out 8 to be able to ride that bull and control the insane movement that he has on his pitches. That's one of the most impressive things for me. Anytime that I look at a guy's line, I'm looking at the walks before I look at the strikeouts, just because of that's just today's game now, where it's almost like the straight four-seam fastball is archaic and it's almost stupid. It's like, why would you throw something that just goes straight when you could throw something that moves a lot? It's like, well, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, because if I throw something that moves a lot, now the risk for walking batters goes up exponentially. So when you're Paul Skenes, you throw pitches that move, the amount that they move at the velocity that he's throwing them at, and you don't walk anybody, holy shit, is that impressive to me.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, Paul Skenes is a perfect pitcher. Like that. I mean, that's kind of what we're dancing around here, is with the understanding that no one can be 100% perfect or immune from injury or whatever. Like this is the lab-built pitcher who is delivering in every sense of the word. I mean, you're talking about the strikeout walk or strikeout control command mix. I mean, he's got the best K minus walk percentage of any right-handed pitcher in baseball, and he's behind only Crochet for starters league-wide, and it's fractionally behind him. He's striking out 34% of his batters, and he's walking fewer than 5%. Like, this is everything. Pitchers don't get better than this, and like it's insane in a way that each time out, he's giving us something to discuss that feels like, at least, I'm sure there's a certain segment of the public that's tired of hearing about Paul Skenes, but like, this is what happens when a guy is as hyped as Skenes is, and he exceeds any reasonable possible expectation for himself. And then he goes out in his most recent outing, and like Timmy, I wasn't thinking this way, but like Timmy brought it up with the Jack Morris start in the World Series. Obviously, the likelihood of anybody getting to the World Series and then having an opportunity in a Game 7 is exceptionally low. Most people go their entire careers without getting to pitch in a game with those sorts of stakes. But like, what I saw last night was a guy who could throw a 10-inning shutout in a World Series game if he was given the opportunity. Like, to your point about efficiency, he entered in with plenty of room to make that a complete game. And if we're talking about the stakes of a postseason, where maybe the pitch counts extended to 115, 120 starts in the highest possible leverage situation, like I do feel like that's the sort of ceiling that we're talking about here, is a guy who could withstand and deliver that sort of start. Obviously, that's hyperbole to a degree, but it's also not. Like, he's just the best pitcher in baseball. You know, when I was doing the either or questions for Timmy, I was trying to think of one with Paul Skenes involved and thinking of another pitcher like either or. And like, who is the pitcher that you're throwing on the other side of that right now? Like I couldn't come up with a name, and I just think that is a reflection of the fact that he may already be the best pitcher in baseball. And at the very least is the best combination of youth, room for continued improvement, and an established level of performance. Like there's just nobody matching this right now in baseball. It's unbelievable every time out. And I know it was a loss, whatever. Somebody said, talk about Lance Lynn. He outdueled him. Great. Lance Lynn delivered 5 scoreless innings. Paul Skenes almost threw a complete game. Like they're different animals here, and his experience is a different one to watch.
We did a segment last night on the Altcast where it was like we had like the paddle that was like thumbs up or thumbs down, and the take was Paul Skenes is a top 3 pitcher in baseball, and I immediately went thumbs up. Like I didn't even have to think about it. Like I don't even know like what 3 pitchers could you make if you were going to be a devil's advocate and be like, these 3 guys are definitely better than Paul Skenes. I feel like you have the same argument for and against Paul Skenes, because the guys that you would put in the top 3 would be guys where it's like, yes, they are having very good seasons. They've been in the league longer. They're having very good seasons, but they're also just having a breakout year this year, which is whereas this is the only season that we've ever seen from Skenes.
For sure. And also,
like you could put Skubal in there. Like it's like, yeah,
totally.
One of the best pitchers in baseball. But like, has he been this guy his whole career? No. It basically started last September. So you started to see it last year, and it's carried over into this year. But we're talking 1-year samples for all these guys.
Yeah, and also like, I'm not a huge like, have you been to the playoffs and done it there sort of guy, because I'm of the opinion that usually talent translates if given enough opportunities. But like, to your exact point, the other guys that you would throw into this conversation, it's not like Skubal has some sort of robust postseason or high leverage pitching resume attached to his name. He's essentially on a similar breakout timeline, to your point, as Paul Skenes. No, I think like, unless you just want to be that sort of guy who defaults to a veteran person in a 1-game scenario, like you're like, I'm taking Chris Sale because I have seen him do it in the biggest moments. Okay, I'm not going to get like red-faced arguing with somebody about that, but for my money, I mean, it has been every time out that this guy has delivered, and it's just the beginning of his career, and it doesn't feel like some sort of Imanaga heater where it's like, okay, this guy might be better than we thought he was, but he's obviously going to regress. Like Paul Skenes is whatever. Say what you want about FIP. His FIP is 2.58. His xFIP is 2.26, and his Sierra is 2.38. Like every underlying ERA indicator suggests that this is one of the most dominant pitchers in the league and will remain so moving forward. It's and like to the point, like that we may still have something in here as he continues to get better. Like he has a 1 point. Sorry, I had it pulled up here a second ago. He's got a 1 point something ERA over his last 1.32 ERA with 59 strikeouts and 7 walks over his last 7 starts. 7 walks. So that circles back to the very first point that you made here, which is like the mix of strikeouts and the absolute refusal to walk people and not pay for staying in the zone like that is basically unmatched right now in baseball.
And it's also not like yes, technically, Justin Verlander, Clayton Kershaw, and Max Scherzer are still active Major League Baseball pitchers, but it's not even like we have the larger body of work Hall of Fame guys where it's like they're at the top of their game. If you were going to pick the top 3 pitchers in baseball right now, you're picking from some guys that are like, yeah, breakout year this year, but it's and then like some of the other guys too, where it's like, yeah, it's a breakout year, but is this sustainable? Are we really going to put this guy in the top 3 pitchers in baseball conversation? With Skenes, it's like he was supposed to be this, and he is this, so he belongs in the conversation. Skubal, I think, all right, yeah, there's some sustainability here, but if we were having the conversation earlier in the season, are we putting Ranger Suarez in the top 3 pitchers in baseball conversation? I think I would have a hard time doing that. Statistically, he would have deserved it, I guess. But like, we're trying to also forecast out, is this sustainable? With Skenes, I think it's pretty easy to forecast out that it's sustainable.
For sure. And that, we're drifting into like, selfishly, I feel like we've now drifted into territory because you brought up like the Verlander, Scherzer, Kershaw stuff. Like that's part of, when we did the video essay on Paul Skenes, that was part of the thinking, is that like we're now past that generation of pitcher, and we are now at a point where like I think any crazier than any Paul Skenes stat from that essay was the stat that German Marquez, who by the way is back on the IL with elbow soreness, but German Marquez has the most career wins of any pitcher who is not yet 30 years old, with 65 career wins. That's part of why Paul Skenes he's obviously very important to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I'm sure he wants to be good for his own sake, but like it's also incredibly important for Major League Baseball that Paul Skenes is a thing and is sustained and continues his trajectory, because he is by far the best chance that Major League Baseball has of having a front and center face of baseball quality starting pitcher over the next 10 years. Like the chances of him being that guy versus like every other possible candidate are basically like equal. He's just so important above and beyond his own, start to start pitching contributions.
Yes. I love to talk Skenes whenever we have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And you brought up during our chat with Tim Kurkjian, you said one or the other, Gunnar Henderson, or Bobby Witt Jr. And wouldn't you know, Bobby Witt Jr. has passed Aaron Judge in FanGraphs wins above replacement after that monster 2.5 month run that Judge went on, where people were bringing out the record books and comps to Barry Bonds. All of it deserved, by the way. Bobby Witt Jr. has surpassed Aaron Judge. And we were having the conversations before about, who would the MVP be, like, if not for Aaron Judge? It's like Shohei Ohtani is a shoo-in, Aaron Judge is a shoo-in, but who's kind of like the runner-up that should be getting some MVP love that won't, because those guys are automatics? I don't think at this point either of them are automatics. Like, I mean, Judge obviously has the stiffer competition, but if Shohei Ohtani were to go on and win the MVP, we've said this a million times, he'd be the first DH to win the MVP. He does lead the National League in wins above replacement, so it wouldn't be some egregious pick if you went with Shohei Ohtani, who is just a hitter. But in the American League, for everything that Aaron Judge has done, and it has been spectacular, Bobby Witt Jr. is right there.
So two things about that. I don't know what the books say. I didn't look at anything before saying this, but I feel like Shohei Ohtani is a better bet to win the NL MVP than any individual player is to win the AL MVP. Like, I just think the path is there for Ohtani to capture that, DH or otherwise. Like, we've said it, we've talked about it on this podcast before. It's not nearly as good of a field as what is going on in the AL. If Ohtani was in the AL, we would not really be talking about his his MVP candidacy with the seriousness that we will be talking about it if he is in the NL. He's on a team that's going to cruise to its own division, and will finish with one of the best records in the NL. I think Ohtani, the floor is set for, or the stage is set for Ohtani to win the NL MVP. You said Judge is not a lock. I think this podcast deserves a little bit of credit for identifying what this AL MVP race was going to be, because I don't think we called it at all in Judge's favor at any point this season. Obviously, there was a stretch where he was the clear-cut favorite, but going back months, we said on this podcast that the potential for an epic AL MVP race, and at that time, it was really too early to be talking about it with any sort of length back in May or whatever, but like, we're now rapidly approaching August. We've got about 2 months left in the regular season, and you have 4 candidates, 3 really, really strong ones, but statistically, there are 4 with Witt, Judge, Gunnar, and Juan Soto. Like, if Juan Soto finishes 4th in the AL MVP, I would say off the cuff, that's going to be one of the greatest 4th place finish seasons in recent MVP history. Like, you brought up FanGraphs wins above replacement. He is as good of a candidate as those other guys. Like, he's separated by a half a win from Bobby Witt. That's within the margin for error.
And tied with Gunnar.
Yeah, and tied with Gunnar. So like this is a 4-man race, even if 2 of them were on the same team. I can't wait because I know that I have Bobby Witt as the call that I made on this podcast. So I guess I will slightly be rooting for him, but I'm much more interested in just the drama of the race because all 4 of these guys are likely to end the season with really compelling MVP cases, and they're going to be different, right? Like Gunnar and Witt are going to be compared to each other as middle infielders, and Judge and Soto will be compared as outfielders. But like, how are we going to balance Judge finishing with 59 or 60 home runs and leading the league in OPS by 75 or 100 points versus Gunnar Henderson or Bobby Witt Jr. delivering 925 or 950 OPS seasons as really competent middle infielders? In Bobby Witt's case, maybe throwing in 35 or 40 stolen bases as well. So I don't know. We've got a ways to go, but the fact that we already have 4 players with 6 or more wins above replacement with, 60 or so games left in the season is a real treat and shouldn't be just like glossed over.
I agree. It's going to be an exciting race because you would think, based on what Aaron Judge was doing, that there would be a noticeable gap between him and the rest of the field. And it is 6.8 for Bobby Witt Jr., 6.7 for Judge, 6.3 for Gunnar, and 6.3 for Soto. So he is neck and neck with Bobby Witt, and then he has Gunnar and Soto right up his ass.
And
it's
just
a 4-horse race.
And just so people don't think we're just cherry picking here to create a narrative where this is close, Baseball Reference has a slightly larger spread, but it's basically the same story in that there are they would throw Jarren Duran into this conversation statistically at the bottom end of the MVP conversation. I don't think, as much as I love Jarren Duran, I think he has an uphill battle to get into this conversation, but they've got Judge at 6'8", Gunnar at 6'6", Witt at 6'3", and Juan Soto at 5'8". So like they're telling a similar story, even if the order of the names are different. But we could be talking about 4 guys putting up 9-win seasons in the same league.
Yeah. And then in the National League, it's like, all right, Shohei's at 5.4. And then the rest of the field, you've got Ellie De La Cruz, who's on a team that's probably not going to make it to the playoffs, 4.9. Francisco Lindor is 3rd in the National League. Did not make the All-Star team. I don't think has been fairly recognized as a player that's having an outstanding, maybe too strong, but a really good year. I think we've kind of just forgotten about Francisco Lindor for whatever reason. 4.6, Ketel Marte, 4.4, and then Bryce Harper at 5 with 4.3. Fair or unfair, the greatest threat to Shohei Ohtani winning the National League MVP is Bryce Harper at 5.
I think that's probably fair. I think there are, as I alluded to earlier, it's an imperfect field in the NL this year, which isn't to say that the winner is going to be undeserving, but you plop any of those top 4 AL guys into the NL and they are the leading candidate. I agree. I mean, Lindor's situation isn't even all that surprising. No matter where you want to set the cutoff, there was a slow start that has been overcome with some great play over the last X number of months. And I agree. It's going to be another year where Francisco Lindor is one of the 4 or 5 most valuable players in his league and doesn't get proper or real serious MVP consideration. I think at the end of the day, you're correct. I think Harper has the profile of someone who could contest Ohtani's bid for the reasons that you brought up. It's basically a mirror image campaign to Ohtani. He just has to catch him statistically. And right now, he's about 50 or 60 points behind in OPS. So not unattainable. But I do think, Ohtani's going to have the sexier stat line too, right? Like almost regardless of what happens, he's got the stolen bases that Harper is never going to have. How much stolen bases should factor into an MVP conversation? Totally up for debate. But Ohtani's going to cruise to 30-30 and may end up with 40-35, may end up with 50-30. It's something like that. So I do think he's going to win. But yes, Harper is the best or the most the most serious threat to that throne.
Yes. I mean, we're looking at Shohei Ohtani's best offensive season.
Yeah.
Someone that already has multiple MVP awards. He is working on his best offensive season that he's ever had as a big leaguer. And wouldn't you want to go out and see some of these guys that we just talked about? Bobby Witt Jr., Shohei Ohtani, Bryce Harper, Ellie De La Cruz, Francisco Lindor. Don't you want to go see these guys play? Because Game Time wants you to do that too. And we, with the help of Game Time, we want to put you in those seats. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer that it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I'll be at Fenway on Friday. You coming, Jake? You're going to be there?
Oh yeah, big Friday this week at Fenway.
Huge Friday. Huge Friday. Sox, Yanks, big series. Haven't been to a game with the boys in a minute. Shout out to Game Time. They never let us down. Save up to 60% off by buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. By the way, I'm going to Metallica at Gillette next Friday. I'm fucking pumped. I want to talk about concerts that I've been dying to see. The Foo Fighters, that got ruined for me because of Steve. But getting to see Metallica at Gillette, I wanted to see Metallica in 2004. The only reason why I didn't go was because it was during, I think, game 1 or 2 of the World Series. I didn't have tickets to the World Series, but I was like, I can't be at a Metallica concert when the Red Sox are in the World Series. Like, this is, at the time, I was like, this is a once in a lifetime experience to be able to even just sit and watch on TV the Red Sox in the World Series. So I passed up my Metallica tickets.
Is Metallica still fighting Napster?
I believe so.
Okay. I just didn't know if they were still tangled up in that legal battle with,
Could be.
legal
Never
downloads
ends.
or whatever. Yeah,
Never ends.
Fight the good fight, Metallica.
Yes. But 20 years later, I'm finally going to get to see Metallica live.
Dude, I'm happy for you. Who are you going with? Can you say that, or is it a mystery?
One of my buddies from home that I was supposed to see Metallica with 20 years ago.
Wow. That's like a movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was the best man in his wedding. So like we've been best friends since kindergarten, and he went to see Metallica in 2004. Obviously he doesn't give a shit. He's a Bruins fan. He doesn't give a shit about the Red Sox. So I called him yesterday and I was like, let's go see Metallica. Wow. And we also love Pantera.
Was he like, who's this?
Yeah, kind of. I mean,
haven't heard from you in 20 years.
Yeah, he's definitely not the talk on the phone type, but yeah, Pantera is opening, and I've never seen them live. We love some Pantera, so that'll be exciting because Game Time isn't just about the sports events. Like they've got tickets for concerts as well.
It's a great point. Wow, 20 years later.
20 years later,
going to see the concert.
Mm-hmm. It's eluded me for 20 years. I wonder how Steve's going to fuck this one up.
How's he involved?
I had to leave the Foo Fighters 45 minutes early. I don't know if you heard about this.
No. I meant how's he involved in this one?
He'll find a way.
Okay. Yeah, I did. Yeah. That's what I meant.
He'll find a way. He'll be like, hey, man, like, we need to do an emergency podcast. We're going live. Or can you come pick me up somewhere? Only you can do it. Can you leave the concert early? He'll ruin this night somehow. Guaranteed.
Shout out to Steve.
Shout out, Steve. Save up to 60% off buying tickets for last-minute concerts, sports, comedy, theater, and more. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. Save even more when you choose a section and you let Game Time choose the seats for you. All-in pricing. Toggle this feature and it shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code BID for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the promo code BID for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And this was last minute. So very excited to go see Metallica. Thank you. Game Time. Mike Trout it's just sad at this point, Jay. It's sad. Mike Trout on his rehab assignment. By the way, shout out to Mike Trout for, I mean, this is commonplace for rich MLB players going down on rehab assignments, but he got the entire team for pregame, got them Chick-fil-A. And then after the game, steaks for the boys. What an incredible gesture. Steaks.
It's awesome, man. Just shout out Omaha Steaks.
Yep. Shout out Omaha Steaks. John Lackey, when he used to go on rehab assignments, lobster for everybody in the clubhouse. That's got to be way more expensive than Chick-fil-A.
Undoubtedly. Yeah, I think my interest in the lobster would be directly related to how close to the ocean is the place where we're doing the rehab assignment. Because, you go to these places, I'm not going to name any specific names, but you go to these places and they're fucking landlocked.
Yeah.
And it's like, you go to dinner, it's like, we got the, lobster thermidor or something like that. And it's like, well, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm from New England. I'm going to get the lobster there. I'm going to have something else here.
Yeah. If I'm playing on a rehab assignment with like the Oklahoma Drillers, is that the team?
Yeah.
Probably not going to have the sushi. I'm going to pass on that.
Nope. I'm going to have beef.
Yeah.
Some
bison. You ever have bison?
I have actually.
Yeah. Bison's good. Good shit.
Yep. I think I ate the last one.
There you go.
I think that was the last bison in the country. I took it down.
Mike Trout got taken down.
Yeah. I mean, I just saw that piece of news and I shook my head and I continued on.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in the same realm as you where you see it and I feel like you're no longer like, oh man, it's more just like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
this is where we're at.
As I either said or thought or alluded to when we talked about him on Monday, I'm not thinking about him in the same way anymore. And that was true before this news came down when we were told he's heading out to AAA for the next step on his rehab or whatever it was. I said, okay, when he's back. And if he does stuff, he does stuff. And he's not going to be back. And I don't know if he's going to be doing stuff. So it's I'm not player hating. I'm just too many other players who are playing baseball on teams that matter more than the Angels to worry about, Mike Trout getting soreness in, the 18th different part of his body over the last 3 years. So I'm not minimizing what he's dealing with either. I'm just saying like, I don't have to care, I'm not an Angels fan and I can't be invested emotionally in Mike Trout's career. At this, moving forward.
I also think that to even expand to have the conversation of like, well, do you think he's going to play? Like, do you think there's a chance that we don't even see him again for the rest of the year? Like at this point, I hate to say it, but like, who cares? Like,
yeah,
I would love to see him back out there, but if he doesn't, and this is what I said in the last episode, if we don't see him again this year, it's he's no longer the premier player that he was where we have to tune in to see Mike Trout. We have so many other players on other teams to choose from that we can get excited about to where I would love to see the Mike Trout redemption story. I would love to see Mike Trout come back. But at this point, it's too late. We thought we were going to get it this year, like opening day, he hits the home run. We're like, fuck yeah, here we go. Mike Trout redemption year. And then this happens. I don't think that there's enough season left for Mike Trout to return and, play X amount of games. You're like, all right, wow, he salvaged his season. Like the season is unsalvageable at this point. So we're on to 2025 with Mike Trout. It is what it is. And it sucks. It's unfortunate, but I just don't have the emotional capacity to be sad about it anymore.
No, man, there are 30 teams and there are, dozens and dozens of exciting players on a nightly basis to tune in to watch, veteran and youth alike. And the game moves on, man. There's nobody that's too big for it. And he may have been the biggest star and legitimately the best player for basically the better part of a decade. But No one has ever been able to maintain that hold on the top spot for their entire lives. And Mike Trout's no different. And it just kind of sucks that it feels like it felt, or it sucks that it feels like it happened earlier than it should have. But he's also not the first person to have that happen to. So I hope he gets back and plays again this year. But whether he does or doesn't, you're right that the overall narrative on his 24 season has been written off, basically.
Yes. Yep. Really quickly to finish out the pod here, the update on the Witt Merrifield injury, who, I mean, you lose Ozzy Albies, gets hit with the pitch and fractured his wrist, and he's out for 8 weeks. So you go out and get someone like Witt Merrifield, who was released by the Phillies. And immediately he gets, what was it? He got hit in like batting practice. It was like on-field drills.
Yeah.
This is from Kevin McAlpin. Witt Merrifield says right middle finger is, quote, pretty gnarly. Shredded the skin underneath the nail. Got 4 stitches going through the nail into the finger. And they glued my nail back down to my finger. The bone was popping out under the skin. Jesus Christ. Like what a descriptive image that is.
Yeah,
by
gross.
Witt Merrifield. And I mean, but in his defense, you almost have to do that because you got released by the Phillies. Philly fans are angry with you. Braves fans have been very moody this year. I will say that. They've been very sassy, very moody. So now they're probably not on his side. They're like, we just got you and you're already hurt. And you're complaining because of a little
finger.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you got a little fingernail injury, you pussy. Like, you have to go full, like, hey, buddy, like, you would call out of work and all you do is fucking type on a keyboard. I got to hit baseballs and throw baseballs. This is what's going on. They had to stitch 4 stitches going through his nail into the finger, glue the nail back down, and the bone was popping out from under his skin. Like, yeah, I would say that merits, like, yeah, maybe I'd sit out a couple days, after something like that.
Yeah. No, I'm not throwing any shade, as somebody who's suffered a very, very catastrophic and serious injury on a baseball field. I would never mock something like what happened to Witt Merrifield. It's disgusting. I didn't want to see anything. I guess I don't really have much to say on it other than
there are pictures out there.
The description. No, the description. When you sent it to me this morning, I specifically went and looked for more information, and all I found was the description of it, and that is gross. And I hope there's not pictures, and I don't want to see them.
I'm going to ask him for a picture right now.
I mean, if we can have exclusive access without violating HIPAA, then, maybe that's good for get that out there, get some real gross stuff on the account, go viral. But
I'm gonna ask him. I'm not gonna tweet it, obviously, but I am curious now to see what that looks like. I forget who it was. Maybe it was JD Martinez. Some player had an injury that people were like, dude, just fucking tape it up and get it out there. Or it might have been his knee or his ankle. And he sent me a page. He's like, don't put this out there. But he sent it to me. This was years ago. And it was like he surgically implanted a bocce ball in his ankle or whatever it was. It's like some of these guys, I feel like some of them, you'd be like, yeah, dude, here's what I'm dealing with. I would appreciate some understanding from the fan base. And some of them are just like, whatever. People can say whatever they want. Fuck them.
Yeah. I wouldn't. Yeah. If I'm Witt, man, I've been in this game too long, made too much money to worry about people criticizing me over my fucking finger, jutting out like it's fucking Halloween. You know what I mean? But yeah, tough break for the Braves specifically. Obviously the guy who's supposed to paper over a 2-month injury for your second baseman immediately getting injured is a tough break, but probably a tougher break for Witt, to be honest.
Yep. I did see that today the Braves held a players only meeting.
Mm-hmm.
They are losing 4-0 in the first inning right now.
Ellie got his 50th stolen base.
Oh, there you go. Yep, 4-0 in the first against the Cincinnati Reds after a players-only meeting held by the Atlanta Braves.
That's tough.
Yep.
It's a bummer when those players-only meetings don't work, because then what do you do?
Yeah. I feel like you should just never broadcast when you have those.
Nope.
Anyways, I forgot that I have to be somewhere at 2 p.m. that is not close to my house.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah. Final thoughts, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I got some nugs here I can drop.
Hit me up.
Few starting pitchers going today. Hunter Brown, 2.45 ERA over his last 13 starts, going back to May 11th. That's against Dallas. Chris Sale, 2.13. That his game was postponed yesterday. He's in the second part of the Braves-Reds game. 2.13 ERA over his last 7 starts since that thrashing he took at the hands of the A's back on June 1st. Jack Flaherty, one of the trade candidates on the market, has a 2.40 ERA over his last 12 starts after a 4.91 through his first 5 of the season. Vladdy Jr. homered again last night, 10 homers over his last 25 games after 7 homers through his first 74 games. Aaron Judge had a 4-walk, 0 runs scored performance yesterday. He is the first Yankees player since Brett Gardner in 2017 to have a game with 4 or more walks and no runs scored. Paul Skenes, who we obviously discussed, highest game score by a Pirates pitcher in a loss since Stephen Brault on August 17th, 2019. He's also the only pitcher in Major League Skenes is the only pitcher in Major League Baseball history to have an ERA under 2 with at least 90 strikeouts through his first 12 starts of the season. Randy Vasquez, under the radar with Paul Skenes taking all the headlines, but let's not overlook Randy Vasquez, first Padres pitcher with a start of 6 innings, 0 runs, 0 walks, and only 1 strikeout since Odrisamer Despaigne on June 23rd, 2014. I haven't pronounced his first name in a long time. So, people want to correct me if I didn't get that right. Forgive me on that one. And then some live research on the pod while we were chatting. We were talking about the possibility that 4 players in the AL finish with 9 or more wins above replacement this year in that epic MVP race. Per Baseball Reference, there has only been one season in Major League Baseball history where 4 players finished with 9, 4 position players finished with 9 or more wins above replacement in the same league. So AL only, NL only. And that was 1912 in the American League when Home Run Baker, Ty Cobb, Shoeless Joe Jackson, and Tris Speaker all finished with 9 or more wins above replacement in the AL. So, hey, man, those 4 guys could potentially do something that we haven't seen in 112 years.
HRB. Shout out Home Run Baker.
Shit, man.
Yeah.
Home Run Baker is like my favorite fucking nickname in the sport because you're like, holy shit, Home Run Baker. Let's pull up his page. And then you realize his career high in home runs was 12. Different era.
Yeah. It's kind of like being the Rocket and you can only throw 82.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, or like Hollywood Havens and only delivering 5 home runs in the Dinger Derby. That's something to build on for next season.
Yeah, we can all learn.
Yep.
We can always be learning.
I learned a lot at the Dinger Derby. There's no question.
Same. I'm not going to do anything about it, but I did learn a lot.
I'll probably think about what I learned for the next 350 something days. And then with, I don't know, a week or so before we head to Atlanta, I'll panic and realize that I haven't implemented anything that I learned.
Mm-hmm.
And, hopefully that's enough time for me to turn it around.
Jake's takes?
Family Feud back tomorrow. I know we blue balled people a little bit out in Dallas. Haven't done it for a little bit, but we are back tomorrow. So keep your eye out for that survey dropping tonight.
Hell yeah. Get it on the Baseball is Dead Discord if you want to be a survey taker. Goes quick, usually 2 to 3 minutes. So you kind of have to catch it at the right time. Those sickos in there, we love each and every one of them for their dedication and their passion for the podcast and what we're doing here at Baseball is Dead.
speaking of that Discord too, nice to meet Tracy, one of the mods.
Yes.
At
Very lovely.
All-Star Weekend. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Super nice.
And I believe her husband. I was a little frazzled, but I believe that was her husband with her, who was also super, super nice.
Both very nice.
Yep. It was very, it's always good to meet the people who put in that sort of effort in the BID community, for sure.
A thankless job.
Yes.
Until we thank them.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I said thank you. Yeah. So technically not thankless.
Yes.
Hopefully that thank you will sustain for a little while, because I don't know the next time we're going to see Tracy, but the next time will be great too.
Can't wait. Maybe in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Big shout out to Tim Kurkjian for making the time to come on today. That conversation was awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. And we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.
Wow.